So in this video, I'm going to discuss what I think is an interesting topic, and that's the differences in progress in males versus females. So how much muscle and how much strength can a woman potentially gain versus a man? So I think that a common and what it is a misconception that men gain faster than women. They gain muscle faster and they gain strength faster, when that isn't actually the case. So I'm going to delve into the hows and whys, and as a female or as a coach of someone female, how can you adjust the training to suit a woman rather than a man? Because there are differences that need to be taken into account, in my opinion, and it's not just my opinion, it's all the research, and there's quite an extensive amount of research in the area. So I'll start with, do women gain strength as fast as men when they start training? So if you take an untrained woman and an untrained man, do they gain strength at a similar rate? So what you find in short-term studies, 12 weeks or less, is that women gain strength faster than men relatively. So what we've got to remember here is I'm talking about relative differences. So we're not talking absolute. So what I mean by that is, if a man's 200 pound and gains 20 pound of lean mass, that's a 10% gain in lean mass. Whereas if a woman's 120 pound and gains 12 pound of lean mass, they've also gained 10%, although it isn't as much absolutely. They've gained 12 pound, the man's gained 20 pound, but relatively it's the same thing. So that's what we've got to keep in mind when we're discussing differences in males versus females. So strength wise, as I say, women tend to, if you get the untrained woman, untrained man, an untrained woman will progress the strength faster, especially upper body exercises, so bench press, overhead press, etc. So basically women seem to start with the average woman, I should say, because this doesn't account for everyone, there's outliers, but the average female has a bit of a deficit in strength in their upper body versus a man when they start. And this could be down to numerous reasons. A lot of it is probably cultural, and the fact that the average man is more likely to have done manual type work with the upper body. I think that plays a big part. And there's also muscle mass distribution as well before training, which will play a part as well. Now, muscle gains over, so you take the untrained man, untrained female, over the first 12 weeks, women tend to gain muscle a little bit faster than men. Again, that's in a relative sense. Now, over the longer term, so a lot of studies aren't done for more than 12 weeks, but there are some studies that have been done for more than 20 weeks. And Greg Nuckols did a meta-analysis on those. So it's basically taking all those studies and finding out so you take all the studies and pull all the results together and then see what the results of that are. So you're analysing numerous studies. And he looked at the ones that were 20 weeks or longer, so it's a significant amount of time. And what he found was, with muscle gains, it was very similar. So men, it was something like a 13% gain in lean mass, women something like 12.8%. So over the longer term, by the looks of what we see, we can expect men and women to gain muscle at a very similar rate. Strength-wise, over the longer term, it also seems to level out, but there is an argument to be made that women may progress strength faster from the start point right through their training career, and that's when you look at athletes comparing strength, like in Olympic lifting, powerlifting, etc. It kind of lines up with that. At the least, we can say that men don't gain muscle or strength faster relatively than women do. So if you're a woman and you want to get into strength training, or you've just started strength training, you don't have to worry that you aren't going to make as much progress as a male when you're putting in the same amount of work. So I think that's a good thing for a female to realise, because one of the issues a female can have, in my opinion, and even the coaches of female lifters, is the perception that they aren't going to gain as fast, or they can't gain as fast. And that's kind of, you're going to get a nocebo effect there, where if you believe that you're not going to gain as fast, you're maybe not going to, just because you're not going to put as much effort in. Because at the end of the day, if you're busting your ass and you don't believe that you'll make the same rate of gains, you're just going to get a bit disillusioned with it potentially, if you're not doing it for long enough to realise that, you know what, I can make faster gains than this. And now there's more females lifting on social media, etc. I think that's very helpful to see what women can actually achieve. Next point. So we've been over why women tend to increase strength faster than men. I think a lot of that is just because an untrained male in a study is more likely to have done some level of resistance training previously, to at least some level, whether it's playing about with the mates or whatever, doing press ups. Men are more inclined to do that in the younger years than women, I'd say, on average. So one of the things that comes up is, how can women gain at the same rate as men when they've got 15 times less testosterone on average? And it can be a bit of a confusing concept, because if you get a man and you give him super physiological doses of testosterone, the run a cycle of steroids, they gain muscle a lot faster. What we've got to think here about is we're comparing natural men to natural women, and testosterone is important in that it's important for baseline muscle mass. So men who have more testosterone generally tend to have more muscle to start with before they train. But that's the point, before they start training, it's the baseline. Because women don't have as much testosterone, their baseline level of muscle is lower before they train. That has no influence on the speed at which they gain muscle or strength, which is maybe counterintuitive to what a lot of people think, because a lot of people perceive women less testosterone, they can't gain as fast, which again, it plays into the nocebo effect. Women actually, they rely more on the growth factors, and so IGF-1 levels are similar in men and women. Growth hormone is higher in women than it is in men, and there's so much going on that I aren't going to pretend to know exactly the mechanisms behind how it works, but it's not just testosterone that's in play as far as gaining muscle goes for women, or for men for that matter. So one of the questions I get asked sometimes when I've discussed this is, why don't you see as many freaky natural women as you do men? And freaky, by that I mean carrying a lot of muscle mass, like mega amounts of muscle. Because you do get it starts with the either natural or not type videos. It's men that are focused on, because you get some men who appear to be using steroids because they're so big. But you don't get as many women who are super jacked. And the reason for this, I believe, is it's the talent pool kind of thing. So how many women train at the gym? Overall, it's less than men. How many women who go to the gym train with weights? Again, that's even less than men. How many women train at the gym with weights, trying to get as most muscular as they possibly can? Way less than men. A lot of men go to the gym to get as big as they possibly can. Not many women go to the gym with the goal of getting as big as they absolutely can, which is probably, that's going to be like, if more women did go to the gym to try and get as massive as they could, you're going to get more freaky looking natural women, just because there's more women then doing it. But yeah, socially it's probably not something, it's not a look that a lot of women strive for. And even then, when we're talking about natural, even a really muscular female isn't going to look like a man. They're just, even though the relative gains might be similar to a guy who's super jacked, they're still going to be absolutely smaller. So that's the reason for that, I believe. So to sum it up, men and women gain strength probably at a fairly equal rate in the long term. Women may be slightly faster with the strength. Other than that, pretty much the same. So if you're putting a lot of effort into your training, you can rest assured that you're going to gain as fast as the average man. Obviously there's outliers, some women are going to gain faster, some women are going to gain slower, same with men. Now, training application. So it's all well and good knowing that, but how do we apply the knowledge about male-female differences to training? And what are my experiences is what I want to talk about as well, training females versus training males. What are the differences that you may need to take into account, or that I feel you should probably take into account to get the most out of your training? So fibre type. Women tend to have greater proportion of type 1 fibres, so slow twitch fibres as they're known. These fibres are less fatigable than type 2 fibres, which means that you're going to be able to so this has the less fatigability of these muscle fibers, and because the women have a greater proportion of them, plays quite a few roles in training. So it's going to mean that on average women can perform more volume of training. Women tend to need less rest between sets. Women tend to be able to train muscles at a higher frequency, because the less fatigability generally means that they're also recovering faster. That can obviously depend on the volume. If you really ramp the volume up, frequency might not be affected too much. But basically, women are able to train harder than men. Women will be able to do more work sets than men. It's probably better, in my experience, for women to do more work sets than men on average. I think my female clients all train at higher volumes than the highest volumes that I've ever set for a male, and it just seems to work much better for them, and that fibre type is probably something to do with it. They also, one of the reasons, this hasn't really been studied extensively. It's been studied isometrically, which means pushing away in the same position for an extended amount of time. So you're not moving, but you're putting force into something. Imagine there's a bar on your chest you can't move, but you're pushing against it. Women are able to sustain contraction for longer, so they don't fatigue as fast as men. As well as fibre type, this could be that women have absolutely less muscle, which means that they get less constriction of the blood vessels as they're putting that force in, which means that they get less metabolites accumulate, which means they get less feedback to the nervous system to shut down or reduce muscle activation. In any case, women tend to be able to sustain force for longer than men. But whereas I have seen some people recommend that women, because of this, type 1 muscle fibers and less metabolite accumulation, say that women should train in higher rep ranges than men. I believe totally the opposite. So the research backs this up as well. What research tends to find is that if you're pushing a set to failure and you're in a 6 to 30 rep range, so you could be doing a bench press and you might have your 6 rep max on and you do a set of 6, or you lighten the load up and you do a weight you can just hit 30 reps for. Now with men, the differences between doing sets of 6 or 30 seem to be minimal. Obviously it's going to be different depending on individuals, but as a general rule, men gain muscle as well doing 30 reps as they do doing 6 reps. When it comes to women, the research suggests that when women get above 20 reps, muscle gains are significantly slower for them than they are at lower reps. So 6 to 10 rep range in the studies is shown to be better for women as far as muscle development goes, and it's going to be higher loading, so that's always going to be better for strength development. So I tend to have my female clients focus primarily on lower reps. So on assistance-based work, where the goal is to build as much muscle as possible, I'll have my females generally do around 5 to 10 reps per set, in between that range, and that seems to work really well. Whereas with a male, I might have them do 20-25 rep sets on occasion, where I won't really delve into that with a female because of those reasons, to just gain better. So to sum up the training side, I believe that women train more volume, so more work sets, generally heavier loading all round. So on assistance work, I wouldn't be doing sets of 20 to build muscle if I was coaching a female or I was a female. In any case, yeah, I'd keep the rep ranges lower, so 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, somewhere around there. You can maybe go up to 15s, but generally low reps are going to build muscle better for women. Now, there's another kind of spanner in the works for women as well, which is the menstrual cycle and birth control. So if you're using birth control, I aren't an expert in it and I don't want to start throwing out recommendations of which to use. Just be aware that higher progestin levels can blunt your adaptations to training, because you're going to get a reduction in androgen signaling, you're going to get a reduction in the growth factors, and you're going to get increases in cortisol. So you don't want a high progestin based birth control if you can help it. And there's also, if you're not using birth control and you've got your menstrual cycle to deal with, again, I'm not an expert in this, but the way I approach it is based on the research that is out there, which shows that females in the first half of the cycle, the follicular cycle, or follicular phase, sorry, they recover faster during this phase than they do the luteal. Is it luteal? Luteal phase, which is the last half of the menstrual cycle. And what they find is that women who concentrate more of the training in the follicular phase, that first phase of the cycle, experience bigger gains in both strength and muscle mass than they do if they spread the training out evenly over the month or concentrate more of it over the luteal phase. So that's got to come into mind as well, and that can be done different ways. It can be a case of, right, in this follicular phase of my cycle, I'm going to do 4-5 sessions a week and keep the volume high. During my luteal phase, the last half of the cycle, I'm just going to drop down to 3 sessions, or I'm going to keep it 4-5, but I'm going to just be mindful of dropping the volume down a little bit because I aren't going to recover quite as fast. So I think that is all I've got. So to sum it all up really quickly, men and women gain strength, gain muscle at similar relative rates. Where a good sum up, was it that? So men and women gain muscle, gain strength at similar rates as males do. Testosterone does not make a difference as far as gains in muscle mass and strength when you start training, although it does if you for your baseline characteristics, and also if you go into super physiological ranges, you're going to build muscle faster, which is pretty obvious to see. As a woman, make sure that you're keeping your rep ranges lower, training volume higher. You don't need as much rest, you can do more frequency, so you can basically, it's good news for women who like to train hard because you can train harder, you can train more often. And if you're using birth control, just be careful, or bear in mind, have a look into it, which is the one that's going to raise progestin the least. And if you're not using birth control and you still have cycles, just bear in mind how you might want to concentrate your training around those times. If anyone's got any questions, anyone wants to send me any questions, just feel free. Right, thanks for watching.